You can open up to Luke 23. That's where we're going to be this morning, Luke 23. We are rapidly nearing our end to our journey through the book of Luke, closing in on 2 years working our way through this book. And while we may be very near the end, just a couple of sermons away from finishing this out, just a couple of Sundays away, we still have much to see. There still is much for us to cover in Luke's account and the life of Jesus, and really more in this case, the next couple of weeks. His death. And you know, as I prepared for last week's message, as we talked about him being the last couple of weeks, really, him being betrayed, and we talked last week about his suffering and being before all the different crowds and all the different people, and then preparing for this week and next week's message. These sermons, the study has hit me in kind of a different way that I don't think I fully expected. I mean, obviously, I'm no stranger, and if you've grown up in church, you're no stranger to the gospel accounts of Jesus' crucifixion. I've studied these and taught from these accounts in various different ways, and more than I can count, I have looked over these and thought about these, but I don't know that I've ever taught them. Maybe I have one time, but it was a little bit different setup as we went through the book of Matthew several years ago. But there's something about reading about his betrayal, reading about his arrest and his trial, reading about his suffering, reading about what we're going to look at today, following 2 years of an in-depth study, walking with Jesus and his disciples. When you walk through a book as methodically as we have, I mean, we've taken almost no Sundays off, with the exception of just a little bit around Christmas. We've taken almost no Sundays off. It's just been week after week after week after week looking at the life and the ministry of Jesus. And so we've gotten so in depth and close to him. And then when you read the accounts of his betrayal, of Peter's denial, when you read about the accounts of his suffering that we'll look at today, it's a different level of like an emotional gut punch that for whatever reason, I just don't think I knew that was coming. I've always struggled with the concept that we are friends of God. Maybe some of you guys can relate to that. Maybe others of you are like, no, that's absolutely how I think of God, and that's not a struggle for me at all. I've struggled with it, not because it isn't true. Abraham is called a friend of God. Jesus himself says as much in John 15:15. He says, I don't call you servants anymore because a servant doesn't know what his master is doing. I have called you friends because I have made known to you everything I've heard from my Father. And so Jesus says to the disciples, I have called you my friends. Abraham is called a friend of God. And so I don't want to say that it's not a biblical thing. It is obviously very biblical, but I think my hesitation comes because I think whenever I hear that in my brain, I think, well, I'm a peer with Jesus at that point. Like I am Jesus's peer, which is obviously, we are not. Like Jesus is matchless in who he is. We are not on the same plane here as friends. And so it's always made me a bit uncomfortable, even though it's a biblical concept. But as we spend 2 years with Jesus, I kind of feel that this kind of kinship that I don't know that I'm not sure that I felt at this level before. Perhaps for those of you that have been here for the last couple of years and walked through this series with us, you feel the same as we come into this. But even if you're joining us for the first time today, the power of these verses is not going to be lost on any of us this morning. We're going to see Jesus is in his final moments, and we're going to listen to what are, frankly, in my opinion, stunning words that come from his mouth. And for all of us, maybe we'll see why it feels so easy to call Jesus, someone who is entirely different than us, how we can call him friend. So let's begin with that. Let's look in Luke 23, verse 26. And they led him away, and they seized Simon, a Cyrenian, who was coming from the country, and laid the cross on him to carry behind Jesus. And a large crowd of people followed him, including women who were mourning and lamenting him. But turning to them, Jesus said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. Look to the days when they are coming and when they will say, 'Blessed are the women without children, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' And then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do these things when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?" So we'll stop right there. If you'll remember last week, Jesus has been arrested. He's gone under trial. He's bounced back and forth between Pilate and between Herod. He's been sentenced to death at this point. And now we make the journey from his arrest and his where he's undergone his trial. We make the journey to Golgotha, to the place where he will be crucified. Only two of the four gospel writers record this moment that we read about here, where this man, Simon, someone we know very little about. Mark tells us the name of a couple of his kids, but outside of that, we really don't know a whole lot about this guy. But we're given this account of him being kind of pulled out of the crowd and told to carry this huge crossbeam that would have been attached to Jesus's back and would have been on his back, and this guy is supposed to pick it up and carry it. Estimates of this beam that would have been across his back, so don't think like the full cross. Part of the cross would be waiting for him. The upright pole would be waiting for him whenever he got to the place of the crucifixion. When he got to Golgotha, this is the crossbeam that his arms would be stretched out on. Now, he's not nailed to it yet. It is simply on his back, and estimates range somewhere between 70 to 90 pounds for this crossbeam. Like, that's difficult for anyone to carry on a good day. You can imagine with what Jesus has endured how difficult this would be. He has the tense moments where he is suffering or where he is sweating blood in the garden, and so he's got the emotional exhaustion that comes with that. He's been beaten, he's been whipped. He's had a crown of thorns put on his head, likely has significant blood loss at this point. He simply lacked the strength and the stamina at this point to carry this beam all the way to the place of the skull, to Golgotha, where he would eventually die, what we'll see next week. And then this man is pulled at random out of the crowd and asked to carry this cross. Now, there's a story here that I would love to know, like the full story. I would love to know what happens after this moment. I would love to know all of what led up to this moment. We're not given the whole thing. All we know is that this is a pretty random guy they happened to see, and that he was just in town as a traveler. And so I try to imagine myself in both of these men's situations, Simon and Jesus. Now, Simon, we really don't know anything. He's a passerby visiting the city, stumbles upon this bloody scene, and this crowd has begun to gather. Remember, Jerusalem is full of people now, as it is time for Passover. People everywhere, and he walks up and he looks, and he's taken aback by what he sees in the street. He's taken aback by what's going on. Like I can just picture him kind of like looking over, straining to see what everyone is looking at. He's kind of looking around. He kind of leans over. He's got maybe his young sons with him that Mark tells us about. He's probably, I'm going to assume, a stocky guy, kind of got broad shoulders, and he leans over to the guy next to him, and he's like, "What happened here? What's going on? What's everybody looking at?" And the guy said, it's a crucifixion. We hate this. Like we don't like this, but we always end up watching. And this guy Jesus, I'm not 100% sure what he did, but man, people really seem to not like him at all. And he says, "Yeah, it looks terrible. What is he doing? Like what has he done to deserve this?" And the guy replies back, Well, nobody's really sure, but there's a whole crowd of people over there chanting, "Crucify him." And they even set this other guy, Barabbas, free, and he's a bad dude. And so if they're willing to like make this kind of swap for Barabbas, and you got people chanting, "Crucify," I'm not 100% sure what he did, but it's got to be it's got to be bad. And then Simon says, wow, they must really want this guy gone. When all of a sudden, as he's trying to process what he's seeing in front of him, soldier reaches out, grabs him, pulls him into the street, and says, "You pick up that thing that Jesus just dropped. It's covered in blood. It's covered in Jesus' blood where he's been beaten." And he says, "Simon, you pick that up and you carry it." And he's like, whoa, hang on just a second. Like, he starts to protest. I don't even know who this guy is. I'm just here in town with my family. I've made a long journey. We've been traveling for so long. I was just watching. Like, what are you making me do this for? But the soldiers don't care. The soldiers have got their own agenda, and their agenda is to follow the orders that they've been given from Pilate, and then has been passed down along the chain of command. The only thing they care about is that Jesus and that crossbeam make it to the place where he's supposed to die. That's their job. And so they'll do whatever they can to make sure it happens. They've got full jurisdiction in that place. Nobody can tell them what to do. Nobody can stop them. And so they see a guy, pretty big guy, pretty strong guy, and they're like, "Look, you should be able to handle this. You come and carry this cross." Can you imagine? You're just there with your family visiting. And the next thing you know, you have this beam of wood covered in blood. You got blood running down your back where this had so much of Jesus' blood on it. This is not what he signed up for when he's like, "Hey guys, let's go check out Jerusalem. Let's go see what's going on there." I've considered this moment so many times over the years, and I still, to this day, I'm not quite sure what to make of it personally. It seems poignant, like poetic almost, but this isn't out of devotion or piety, so it's not as though we can look to Simon and be like him, take up the cross, because he was just pulled out of the crowd. Like, he didn't do this willingly. He didn't do this because he was like, "Oh, I hate to see Jesus suffer. Let me go and help." Like, he was just compelled to do it. So there's not like anything in his actions that are like commendable for us to do exactly. It's just kind of a random moment. But I think probably what strikes me most is the echoing of Jesus' words from earlier on in Luke's gospel. Luke 9:23, he said to them all, "If anyone wants to follow after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me." Out of the 12 disciples, one disciple's betrayed him, one has denied him. The other 10 are nowhere to be found in any of the gospel accounts. Maybe they're one of the people that are on the street, like leaning in and watching, maybe. But there's no indication that they are. Every indication is that they have fled, that they are gone. And I would think if a soldier knew that one of his disciples was there, that one of his followers were there, that would make for an easy mark for that soldier to be like, "Hey, aren't you one of his friends? You get down here and carry this for him." But that doesn't happen. So there's some conjecture there that his disciples are all gone. But based on all four of the accounts, it's pretty reasonable to think. Some others kind of come around in the last moment, but for the most part, you hear nothing out of them. It's just some random passerby that has to take up the cross in this moment. Here in Jesus' last moment, there is no friend, there is no disciple, there is no follower there. And yet Jesus stumbles ahead, covered in blood. And there is a man that has taken up the cross and is quite literally following Jesus. In this moment, though he does not know Jesus, he looks more like a disciple than the disciples do. And so this simple question will start us off this morning. Do you look like a disciple? And do I? Do we look like a people that have taken up the cross of Jesus and are following him to Golgotha? Or do we look like a disciple that has fled and cannot be found? 1 Peter 4:12, I think probably reflects on this. I think Peter probably reflects on this. And he says, "Dear friends, don't be surprised when a fiery ordeal comes among you to test you, as if something unusual were happening to you. Instead, rejoice as you share in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may also rejoice with great joy when his glory is revealed." It's such a beautiful picture of this man, Simon, who is sharing in the sufferings of Christ. Yes, he's been compelled to in this story here, but he is sharing in the sufferings of Christ. And it is my hope that we have this story from Luke because Luke sat down with him. Maybe one of his kids sat down with him and said, "Let me tell you about this crazy thing that happened to my dad on the way to Jerusalem." And now we are Christians because of what happened to my dad on that day. Well, I don't know if that happened. I don't know if this man Simon became a true follower of Jesus. It is my hope that he did. But he literally took up the cross and followed Jesus. Followed him straight to Golgotha. This is the call for us as disciples. Our life should look like this man's walk does right here. Following behind a crucified Savior. And I think most of us spend most of our lives trying to make sure our life doesn't look like that. That we don't endure that kind of thing. But that is what a disciple truly looks like. So that's the man, Simon, that we have here. And then I try to put myself in Jesus' place, which is always a dangerous thing for us to do. But I try to put myself in Jesus' place. Where would my mind be if I were him? On my way to my death. The one I have seen coming for some time now. I can barely stand. I can barely walk. The sweat mixes with the blood. It comes into my eyes. I can tell you this. If I had been where Jesus is in this moment, every thought I had would have been about myself. Every one of them. It would have been about my pain. It would have been about my future. It would have been about my friends. It would have been about my loneliness. It would have been about me. A heavy dose of sadness, anger, and rage probably would have flooded my heart at the men that are beating me for nothing. An innocent man, me innocent, done nothing to have to endure this, to deserve any of this. I would have been thinking about that and dwelling about that at like the entire time. I'm sure of it. You ever get like random movie quotes stuck in your head, and then after a while they just kind of become part of your like personality, like they just kind of become part of like who you are. You end up quoting them all the time, like even if it's just in your own mind. I've probably got like half a dozen of those in my head. I was thinking about this. I was actually thinking about this just the other day. I was riding with Abby, and we drove by, and they're doing some construction on the road on the way to our house, and there's like a giant hole there. And as we went by, I was like, wow, what a hole. Which, who knows what that reference is from? Anybody? Oh, I know you do. This is from Home Alone 2, where he walks in and he falls in the giant hole, and then he ends up on his back, and he looks up and he's like, wow, what a hole. I have quoted that far more times in my life than I ever should have. And I don't know if it's just because we have this sinkhole out here or what, so it just kind of lends to it or what it is. But that's one of them where I'm just like that's always in there. But there's another one from Field of Dreams, and this is just me being a baseball guy, I guess. But toward the end, after plowing over his corn, after building a baseball field, after doing all of these things that everyone thinks that he is crazy for, Kevin Costner's character, Ray Kinsella, gets super frustrated because it seems like everybody else is getting the joy out of the sacrifices that he has made, and Ray gets a little frustrated that he's not getting some of the perks. Like he gets a little annoyed that he's not getting the reward, and so Ray's having a conversation with the guy that's there playing Shoeless Joe and one of the players, and he says, I've done all this for everyone, and not once have I asked, what's in it for me? And then Shoeless Joe looks at him and says, well, what are you saying now, Ray? And Ray says, well, I'm saying, what's in it for me? I think about that quote a lot. Like, I don't know why, but that one is one that just kind of lives in my head. Just him saying, what I'm asking is, what's in it for me? I can tell you this much. If I'm Jesus, I'm saying to the Father at this point, never once have I asked you what's in it for me. But right now, with this blood and sweat in my eyes and me struggling to take the next step, I'm probably going to be tempted to ask, what's in it for me? Like, that's where I'm going to be. If I'm enduring this level of suffering and I'm doing it for a totally unjust reason, I would be asking, what's in it for me, God? But not Jesus. Not Jesus at all. We're going to see 3 things he says today, and all of them are the exact opposite approach of what I would be doing or thinking. So we've read the first one here already, kind of a weird thing. We don't hear this one quoted a whole lot at Easter, I don't think. But he looks at the crowd and he says, don't weep for me. That's how he begins. He says, don't weep for me. I'd want all the tears. I'd want all the sorrow. I would want the streets lined with people crying for me and acknowledging that I didn't deserve this. But he says to the onlookers that are there lamenting what they are seeing, he says, don't weep for me. Essentially what he says is weep for yourself and for your people. He says, this moment will forever be a stain upon you. If they do this to me, an innocent man, this is the whole green wood, dry wood comment that he's got there. If this is what happens to me, an innocent man, you can imagine what will happen to you when God removes his hand of restraint and punishes you for your sinfulness. Now, that is a harsh word. That is a harsh word, but it is a compassionate one as well. That is not a word out of anger. That is not a word out of rage. That is not a word out of vengeance. That is a word out of compassion. He takes their sorrow and he tells them to redirect it into a way that is far more useful and beneficial to see their own future. Again, it's not a kind word, but it is a merciful one. Friend, if you read this story of Jesus and you think, poor Jesus, it's so sad that they have treated him this way, then you have missed the point of his life and his death. And here's the thing. This is the attitude of so many that do not know Jesus. They say he was a good man. He was an unfairly persecuted man, a man destroyed by the system and by gross injustice. We weep for Jesus the way we weep for anyone that has suffered at the hand of a powerful and corrupt system. And so Jesus becomes like the poster boy for injustice and people that are not followers of Jesus, but have some admiration for Jesus, look at him and they say, I'm so sorry that he had to go through what he went through. That must have been awful for him. It was so unjust. He was an innocent man. Jesus says, save your tears for somebody else. In fact, save them for yourself. He says, if he was brought to this place of suffering, this innocent man who did not deserve it, imagine what's in store for you. A person covered in sin and neck deep in guilt. Weep for yourself. Jesus does not want you to weep for him. He wants you to believe in him. He is not looking for sorrow and sadness. He is looking for faith and repentance. This is the first lesson that Jesus teaches us of the cross. The first one for us this morning. Let's look at the second. Luke 23, verse 32. 2 other criminals were also led away to be executed with him. When they arrived at the place called the Skull, they crucified them there, along with the criminals, one on the right and one on the left. And then Jesus said, Father, forgive them, because they do not know what they are doing. and they divided his clothes, and they cast lots. Again, there are plenty of places where Jesus' actions are stunning to me, simply because it is so stark to me, the difference between what Jesus does and what I would have wanted to do. Like it just takes you back, like makes me step back a minute. He has a gross injustice done to him, and his response is to say, Father, forgive them. As they arrived at Golgotha, prepared to lift Jesus up on the cross, strip him down, and the moment of the most intense suffering is about to begin, I would be praying, Father, smite them for this blasphemy and wipe them off the face of the earth. Their evil is all over them. Jesus is praying, Father, forgive them. Now, Jesus' prayer couches their forgiveness in their ignorance, but don't misunderstand what is happening here. They still need forgiveness. An offense in ignorance is still an offense. Whether you meant to sin against God or not, you still did. Jesus' caveat, the whole "for they know not what they do," is more of an indication of empathy from Jesus than a theological caveat. So don't mistake your theological categories that he has here. He's putting himself in their shoes. While he is being strung up, nailed to a cross, he's thinking about them and how they're processing what they are doing. He is loving his enemies as he has taught us by trying to understand how they could commit this level of evil. This moment, as Jesus is lifted up on the cross and then says, Father, forgive them, this moment is one of the pinnacle moments in the history of the world. It's one that is still cited today by Christians and non-Christians alike. I think what makes it so spectacular in this moment is that Satan appears to be, at least feels like he is at the peak of his power. The darkness is finally winning. The sun is beginning to be eclipsed. And yet no matter how dark the evil gets, it cannot extinguish this flame. He is praying for them. He is interceding for them. He is forgiving them. He is empathizing with them, even as they drive the nails in his hands. Friends, we need no further reminder that forgiveness is a gift of God himself. We don't have this in us. We don't have this capability in us. Only Jesus does. But because he does, we now have access to it too. If we are going to forgive like this, if we are going to live a life that looks like this, we aren't going to summon it from deep within ourselves. We aren't going to summon it from our sense of fairness or justice or righteousness. It will come from our understanding of the grace and the mercy of Jesus. We sang just a second ago that we love because he first loved us. We forgive because he has forgiven us. We cannot summon that from within. That only comes from following in the example of Christ. And then him empowering us through the Spirit to live and to walk like this. There's no what's in it for me from Jesus here. Just a recognition of what's in store for these soldiers and a prayer for his enemies. He's not like us. He's looking to those that are out, even the ones that are harming him, that are hurting him, that are murdering him. He is looking at them and he is saying, Father, forgive them. Even in that level of a moment, his eyes are looking to others and loving them. And then finally, a third interaction for us to see this morning. Luke 23, verse 35. The people stood watching, and even the leaders were scoffing. He saved others. Let him save himself if this is God's Messiah, the chosen one. The soldiers also mocked him. They came offering him sour wine and said, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. An inscription was above him, this is the king of the Jews. And then one of the criminals hanging there began to yell insult at him. Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. But the other answered, rebuking him. So one soldier on one side is saying, yeah, aren't you the Messiah? If you're the Messiah, you'll get down from that cross. But then the other one on the other side says like they're arguing across Jesus. Like they're arguing with each other. And he says, don't you even fear God since you are undergoing the same punishment? We are punished justly. Like we deserve this. You know we deserve this. Like we had this coming because we're getting back what we deserve for the things we did. But this man has done nothing wrong. And then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And he said to him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. Jesus is numbered among the transgressors here, to quote Isaiah 53. It's funny, when you read through this, like I could have spent the entire morning this morning reading stuff from the Old Testament that Luke is citing directly from. Like at verse after verse, I could have read the whole Old Testament, like parts of the Old Testament this morning, and then said, this is what Luke was referring to. This is what Luke was referring to. This is what Luke is referring to. Every action Pilate takes, every action the Jewish leaders pursue, everything the soldiers do, even that these two men take, everything that happens in these chapters, even Judas and Satan who entered into him, every action is simply fulfilling all that was said about Jesus. All this evil, Satan's plan at its peak, darkness rising, Satan seemingly growing in his power and his influence. Even in this, his peak moment, his high watermark, his moment of greatest triumph, all Satan can do, all Pilate can do, all the soldiers can do, all these two thieves can do is fulfill Scripture and execute the plan laid before the foundation of the world. Open theists and theologians like them will tell you that God has to adjust on the fly, giving account for all possible scenarios and the infinite ways they can play out, and that God is kind of waiting to see what happens and then kind of like counter move type of thing here. The Bible tells you that God doesn't have one hair on our heads that he can't count or know one word on our tongue before we say it. This was all his plan. It's all his work, and Satan is simply doing the bidding of the Father, even as he thinks he is driving the whole story. It's kind of like the kid at Dollywood, right? You ride the antique cars at Dollywood. Like that kid thinks he's driving that car. He thinks he's telling that car where to go. But you know where that car is going to go? Right where the engineer designed it to go. Because he's not in charge. He's just kind of along for the ride. They were never driving anything, and neither is the evil in this world or Satan when he was at what appeared to be his strongest. This could not be more evident than in this exchange from these two men. They're hoisted up, Jesus flanked on either side. Unlike Jesus, they are guilty of their crimes. They don't debate that. The hate and the reviling from the soldiers seems to have fed into these two criminals. In their moment of suffering, they look over and they feel that they even are superior to this guy between them. Matthew tells us that both of them reviled Jesus. We only have one in this account from Luke, but Matthew tells us that both of them reviled Jesus. But then we see that one of them changes his tone. You see that there in verse 40. He says, "Don't you fear God, But why does he change? We're not told why he suddenly seems to get it. Like suddenly seems to see what's happening. I wonder if as they hung there, that these men didn't hear the passersby. They didn't hear the soldiers talking. They didn't look around and see the mourners that were around. If the one who eventually turns to Jesus, if he didn't hear that this man in the middle claimed to be the Son of God, maybe he heard people talking about how he was innocent and they don't know what he did. It seems as though he picks up on that somewhere. But even though he was innocent, there he is, hung up on the cross, just like the others that are there. Maybe he heard that Barabbas was set free in his place. Maybe he read the inscription up above his head that said, King of the Jews. Maybe he started to remember scripture from whenever he was a kid. Isaiah 53, Psalm 22, the stories of the suffering servant all throughout the book of Isaiah, the promise of the Messiah. Maybe he starts to remember some of that stuff. He starts to put two and two together and he starts to say, wait a minute, so this guy was this and this guy was that. And he starts doing all that while he's hanging there struggling to breathe. I'm not sure. Maybe he didn't know any of those things. Maybe he heard Jesus praying for his enemies and recognized the innocence that he held versus his own guilt that put him on that cross. No matter how he got there, he realizes this man Jesus is different. He is a king of some kingdom. And he chastises the other criminal, telling him to be quiet and fear God. And he looks at Jesus, and in the most simple expression of faith, he says, please remember me. And Jesus says, today you will be with me in paradise. Jesus again looks to his left. He does not condemn or dismiss. He does not faint in a puddle of self-absorption or self-pity. I mean, I feel certain that would have been me, feeling sorry for myself up there, not paying attention to anyone, what anyone is saying around me or what anyone is doing around me. I would be wallowing in self-pity about how horrible it is that me, innocent, am up there. Not Jesus. He celebrates that even in the darkest hour in the history of the world, this man next to him will be in paradise. Isn't that something? Like the darkest moment in the history of the world, you still have the blinding light of grace and the love of Jesus. Just not just like illuminating the room, but just blasting away the darkness. I want to close. I want to show you guys a clip, and this is how I'm going to close. I don't usually show clips of other preachers. I don't usually do that because I'm usually so much better. But I'm just kidding. But I do. This is a pastor. His name is Alistair Begg. He does a masterful job of talking about this thief on the side of Jesus and the man on the middle cross. And just so that I can say it out loud, like as I've gone through the book of Luke, Alistair Begg has been one of my go-to resources. He does a masterful job walking through the book of Luke. And maybe you've seen this sermon video over the last couple of years. It's gone viral at some point. It's been around for a few years now. But this is how I'm going to end. So I'm like the band's going to come up as soon as this clip is over, and then I'll come back up and we'll pray here in just a minute. But I just want to show you this video, and I just want you to let the beauty of Jesus, who is not like us, who never says, what's in it for me, but is always the only thing where we can truly find grace and peace. And And it comes through something like this on the cross. Guys, you can go ahead and show that video.
Without the preaching of the cross, without preaching the cross to ourselves all day and every day, we will very, very quickly revert to faith plus works as the ground of our salvation. So that, to go to the old Fort Lauderdale question, if you were to die tonight and you were getting entry into heaven, what would you say? If you answer that, and if I answer it in the first person, we've immediately gone wrong. Because I believed, because I have faith, because I am this, because I am continuing. Loved ones, the only proper answer is in the third person, because he. Think about the thief on the cross. And what an immense, I can't wait to find that fellow one day to ask him, how did that shake out for you? Because you were cussing the guy out with your friend. You'd never been in a Bible study. You never got baptized. You didn't know a thing about church membership. And yet you made it. You made it. How did you make it? That's what the angel must have said, like, what are you doing here? Well, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Well, because I don't know. Well, excuse me, let me get my supervisor. They go get the supervisor, Ranger. So, we're just a few questions for you. First of all, are you clear on the doctrine of justification by faith? The guy said, I never heard of it in my life. And what about, let's just go to the doctrine of Scripture immediately. This guy's just staring. And eventually, in frustration, he says, on what basis are you here? And he said, the man on the middle cross said, I can come. Now, that is the only answer. That is the only answer. And if I don't preach the gospel to myself all day and every day, then I will find myself beginning to trust myself, trust my experience, which is part of my fallenness as a man. If I take my eyes off the cross, I can then give only lip service to its efficacy, while at the same time living as if my salvation depends upon me. And as soon as you go there, it will lead you either to abject despair or a horrible kind of arrogance. And it is only the cross of Christ that deals both with the dreadful depths of despair and the pretentious arrogance of the pride of man that says, I can figure this out and I'm doing wonderfully well. No, because the sinless Savior died, my sinful soul is counted free, for God the just is satisfied to look on him and pardon me.